This is the Canadian Taxpayers Podcast. We're dedicated to lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. I'm Kris Sims. I'm the BC director. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Kevin Lacey. Kevin, you are the Alberta director, but I got to say, you and I first worked together when I was at Sun News Network, and you were the Atlantic director, and we were going after the Blue Nose, man. The only problem with the Blue Nose is that it was a boat that didn't float, is what I recall.
Yeah, so that just dates me from way back then. Yes,
Me too.
remembering all that, and maybe how long I've been here talking about these issues. But we'll have to we'll take it on bigger and better issues now.
Exactly. And we're still on the issue of government waste and the waste of taxpayers' dollars. Now, you are covering this stadium deal that turned into not being a stadium deal in Calgary. This is, of course, the home of the Calgary Flames in the NHL. What happened with that arena there?
Well, look, in 2019, the city council voted to give half of a $550 million stadium to the Calgary Flames to play in. And taxpayers were worried then about this agreement. And a lot of people felt like, why are we giving all of this money to a hockey team that is profitable, that is incredibly valuable, at a time when taxpayers in Calgary are seeing a decline in both the services that are being provided and an increase in taxes? It didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And a lot of the critics back then said, look, this deal isn't going to work because the costs are going to go up. We're going to see these challenges meet the stadium as we go forward. And lo and behold, they proved to be correct. And just before Christmas, Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek went out and basically threw up the white flag and said, we're not going to be able to do this deal. The Calgary Flames ended up walking away from it precisely because there wasn't enough taxpayers' money already. So this is, but I think what really this leads to is that the critics were right about this when the Taxpayers Federation first started criticizing this. When this deal first came out, a lot of that turned out to be true. And I think in the end, taxpayers in Calgary are going to benefit as a result of this deal going down.
Now, a lot of us like hockey. I can tolerate the Flames so long as we're beating them like we did in the 94 Stanley Cup playoffs way back when, again, dating myself. But this sounded like it was going to be bloody expensive. How much money are we talking about here? How much would have this cost taxpayers if the deal had gone through?
Well, the one thing you can always count on with these stadiums is the price is always going to go up. So initially, the cost of this was about $550 million, but that cost has escalated. So just this summer, the Flames came to the city and said, look, we're not going to be able to go through with this building because of the escalating costs. So the city said, okay, no problem. We'll give another $12.5 million towards the building. And then we're now reaching here in December where costs are going up yet again. And taxpayers were already going to pay through their municipal taxes. They were going to pay through a ticket tax. And the agreement was going to last for 35 years. And while the Flames are going to play in the building, the city was going to own it. And that means they could have been on the hook for even more money in trying to keep this thing running. And if there were any structural changes or that needed to get changed with regards to that arena. So look, this was going to be a real albatross for a long time for taxpayers. You were going to pay money to billionaire owners. And I think one of the questions a lot of taxpayers were asking is, why are we contributing to this particular business and ensuring that these business owners get that much wealthier when we don't contribute to any of these other businesses, these small businesses, or imagine how outraged people would be if they were contributing to, say, a Costco or a Walmart down the street from their house.
Yeah, exactly. It has, similar footprint, right? Lots of people use it. You could make all those arguments. Now, what I found really interesting or amusing is that apparently it was the last minute strings that were being attached to this thing by the newly elected city council there in Calgary. I hear that they were green strings. What was going on there?
Yeah, like this is one of the stories of this. And I think one of the things that learning people, if you're not in Calgary and you're listening to this, we should really make you pause when politicians make pronouncements, they actually have consequences. So one of the things when the new mayor was elected, she went out and said, look, we're going to call this a climate emergency, and that everything that happens now in the city will be viewed through this climate emergency, and that building permits and anything else that the city does will have to pass these climate checklists that the city put forward. Now, when she made that pronouncement, that's the same time the city went to the Flames and said, look, we'll approve your development agreement for this arena that we're contributing to, but only if it has changes to the roadway, but most importantly, that they wanted to add solar panels to the building to make it carbon neutral over the next 35 years. That was going to cost more money. And the Flames essentially said at that point, we're done. Like the benchmarks keep changing, and we can't keep moving the ball every time you guys want to change a public policy. And now the city bureaucrats are come back and said, oh, no, that had nothing to do with anything. But all you have to do is look at the timeline. One politician says one thing, government acts on the license, on the building permit at the same week. It's pretty hard to believe that those two things are not connected. And so anyone listening to this, when you hear these politicians add these things, which seem all, very virtuous, there's real world consequences. And this is a great example of one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, when I heard that there were green strings, I was going to joke and say, were they going to force them to put solar panels on the roof to make avocado toast? Like, but that's why. Okay, and they do.
But there's some irony here that the team is called the Flames after the flame on the top of an oil refinery. Like, yeah. There's actually there's a bit of irony in this whole thing that seems to be lost on the city and the mayor, which runs this place. So. Yeah, I think though, like the lesson here is about consequences, yeah. and that these things that politicians say that sometimes we want to discount or that it comes to, there's a real world when rubber hits the road, yeah. where this stuff really has an effect on people's ability to do business.
Oh, it's not just fluffy, empty words. Like in Vancouver, I'm going to drive down there in a minute here to go take a picture of the $1.76 per liter gasoline.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On
yeah.
the sign. They declared a climate emergency, years ago. Now they're actually trying to make it law so that if you're building big new condo developments, housing, which we need, you're not allowed to have a parking lot. Like no parking, not even for electric cars. Like, so when you start doing stuff like this, it does have real world consequences. So, all right. And so in Calgary, what's next though? Like, did the Flames need a new place to live? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think there's two things which is going to happen now. I think taxpayers can count on another debate on a state. I don't think this is unfortunately the death of this deal, though I think a lot of us wish it would be. There seems to be a lot of inertia by the city to try to re-kick up this agreement, and any agreement now is going to be worse than the one before. And just to give you a sense, the $550 million agreement that the city initially agreed to, the direct return on investment then was a negative. So any deal now we start adding money is only going to make that much worse. So this deal could get worse before it gets better. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're going to be blowing the whistle on just how bad of a deal the first one was before we even get into a second deal, which I think we're looking at to sometime in the summer.
Man, make it stop. Kevin, Lacey, thank you so much for updating us on this, and stick with it.
Thanks.
You bet.
Hi, I'm Scott Hennig, president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. If you've got another minute, I'd like to ask you to think about the one person you know that would really enjoy listening to this podcast. Do us a favor and do them a favor and send them a quick note to let them know about it. At the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we believe there is power in numbers. That's why we've worked so hard to build an army of taxpayers who are ready to push back. And we did it because people like you shared our work with that one person that they knew would really appreciate taking part. Thanks for listening, and thanks for doing your part to make Canada a better place.